When Ty Borden collapsed in Amy's arms, fans all over the world stopped breathing. One moment he was fine, smiling, strong, alive. The next, he was bleeding from a silent wound. The scene didn't just break Amy, it shattered millions of loyal viewers who had watched Ty grow from a troubled boy into a loving father and husband. But what really caused this heartbreaking twist? Was it just a sudden decision by the writers? Or did something much deeper lead to Ty's unexpected death? The truth, as it turns out, came from the man who played Ty himself, Graham Wardle. It happened in the very first episode of season 14. Fans had waited so long, excited to see Ty and Amy back on screen together. They had just survived a shooting. Things were finally supposed to calm down. The ranch was peaceful. The horses were healthy. Amy and Ty were rebuilding their life, side by side. But then, the unthinkable happened. Ty suddenly collapsed. Amy called his name in panic. There was confusion, fear, and disbelief. For a moment, it didn't feel real. But then it was confirmed. Ty had developed a blood clot from the gunshot wound. It traveled to his heart, and there was nothing anyone could do. Just like that, he was gone. Not in battle, not in a dramatic car crash, but quietly, painfully, and far too soon. This scene stunned the entire Heartland audience. It wasn't just a main character dying. Ty Borden had been part of Heartland since season 1. He was more than a fan favorite. He was the emotional heart of the show. From his early days as a rebel trying to find his place, to his transformation into a kind, responsible man who built a life with Amy, Ty's journey was one that many viewers felt deeply connected to. His love story with Amy had been the backbone of the series for over a decade. Fans had watched their first kiss, their fights, their makeups, and finally their wedding. They had even seen them become parents. It was a rare, beautiful story that grew with the audience. And now, in just a few minutes of screen time, that story ended. Amy was left a widow. Lindy was left without a father. And fans were left heartbroken. Many people were angry. Some cried. Others just stared at their screens, unable to believe what had just happened. Social media lit up with comments. Why would they do this? How could the writers be so cruel? Is Ty really gone? Some even hoped it was a dream sequence or a mistake, but sadly it wasn't. What made it worse was the way it happened. There was no build-up, no warning. Ty seemed healthy. He had survived the worst. The writers gave no hints that he was in danger, and that's what hurt the most. It felt like losing someone in real life. Sudden, unfair, final. Fans wanted answers. Was it just for shock value? Was there a fight behind the scenes? Did Graham Wardle get fired, or was it something personal? These questions spread like wildfire in fan forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube comment sections. People weren't just upset. They felt betrayed. After all the love, the growth, the hope Ty represented, this ending felt like a punch to the heart. But what most didn't know was that Graham Wardle had his own story, and the choice to kill off Ty wasn't made by the writers. It came from Graham himself, and his reason was something no one expected. The silence after Ty's death wasn't just inside the show, it echoed across the real world. Fans didn't just move on, they demanded answers. Twitter exploded with heartbreak. Instagram flooded with tribute posts. On Facebook, Heartland groups were overwhelmed with people posting their grief. Many refused to accept the truth. Some hoped for a twist. Maybe Ty would return in a dream, or perhaps he had faked his death. But week after week, as the episodes rolled on, it became painfully clear. Ty was really gone, and nobody could understand why. Ty's death felt too real, too harsh. He wasn't just a fictional character. For many fans, he had become a symbol of growth and healing. People had watched him grow up, change, fall in love, and build a life. Losing him felt like losing a friend. And so, questions began pouring in, not just to the showrunners or the Heartland Instagram page, but directly to Graham Wardle himself. Why did you leave? Couldn't you have just taken a break instead? Please come back. His inbox, his social feeds, and his comment sections were full of pain, but Graham stayed quiet for a while. And when he finally spoke, his words brought both peace and even more heartbreak. He didn't blame the writers. He didn't complain about the show. Instead, he opened up with deep honesty. Graham explained that leaving Heartland was one of the hardest choices of his life. He loved the show. He loved Ty. And more than anything, he loved the fans. But something inside him had changed. He spoke about feeling the need to grow beyond the role. He had spent over a decade in Ty's shoes telling stories that had real impact. But now he felt called to explore something new, something spiritual, something deeper. He wasn't walking away from Heartland out of anger or boredom. He was stepping away because it was time, not for the character, but for the actor. This truth hit fans differently. Some still didn't want to accept it, others respected it, but most finally understood. This wasn't a cheap plot twist or a ratings trick. It was a personal journey. Graham had outgrown Ty, not in a proud way, but in a painful, honest way. He even admitted that he knew how hurt the fans would feel. That's why he worked closely with the showrunners to make Ty's exit respectful. He didn't just want to disappear off screen. He wanted Ty's death to matter, to teach something, to carry the same weight Ty's life had carried for so many seasons, and the producers agreed. That's why the death wasn't sudden violence or a simple goodbye. It was slow, quiet, and emotional. It showed how life can change in an instant, how grief can strike without warning, and how even in loss there's a path forward. Ty's death wasn't just a farewell. It was a message, but even with the explanation, the show felt different. Something warm was missing. Fans could feel it. Still, the story had to go on. And Amy's pain became a mirror for the audience. Just like her, fans were left to face the future without Ty. But behind that grief, there was also gratitude for the years of storytelling that Graham had given so deeply. The moment finally came, not on TV, not in a dramatic interview, but in the quiet setting of a podcast. Graham Wardle sat in front of a microphone, no script, no spotlight, just his voice, raw and honest. It wasn't a press stunt, it wasn't for ratings. It was simply him, choosing to speak directly to the people who had loved Ty Borden for nearly 14 years. His podcast, Time Has Come, became the space where Graham told the truth. He spoke slowly, with care, because he knew what his words meant to millions. And then he said it. It was my decision. No drama, no blame, just a deep need for change. Graham explained that playing Ty had been the biggest gift of his life. But over the years, something inside him had shifted. He didn't feel the same fire anymore. Not because he stopped loving the show, but because he started hearing a quiet voice telling him it was time to move on. He talked about the power of listening to your heart even when it hurts. Graham had always tried to live with meaning. He wasn't just an actor chasing roles. He was someone who believed in purpose, and staying on the show just to keep others happy didn't feel honest anymore. He wanted to grow. He wanted to challenge himself. And most of all, he didn't want to just drift through the motions. When you feel something is done, you have to listen, he said. Fans finally had the answer they had begged for. And it wasn't cruel. It wasn't cold. It was deeply human. Graham's message wasn't only about his choice, it was about life. He said something that stuck with many. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is the most loving thing to do. By leaving, he gave Ty a real ending. A powerful, painful, honest one. He didn't just fade away or get replaced. Ty's journey ended with emotion and meaning, because that's what the character deserved. He also made it clear, he wasn't gone from storytelling. He was just shifting paths. Through his podcast and other creative work, Graham hoped to inspire people in a different way, not as Ty Borden, but as himself. And even though it wasn't the answer everyone wanted, it was the one that brought closure. Many fans cried again, this time, not from heartbreak, but from understanding. They realized how much pressure must have been on Graham to carry such a beloved role, to face the weight of fan expectations, and still to choose truth over comfort. In that quiet confession, Ty didn't just die, he transformed. His legacy wasn't only the years he lived in the story, but the powerful way he was allowed to leave. And that decision, brave and painful, belonged fully to the man who brought him to life. Ty's death could have been just a plot twist, a quick goodbye, a forgotten name. But Heartland did something rare in television. They let the grief breathe. They let the silence stay. They didn't rush Amy to move on or force the story to pretend everything was okay. Instead, they gave space for the pain. They honored it. Because losing Ty wasn't just a character loss, it was the end of a heartbeat. From the very first episode of season 14, Heartland changed its tone. Everything felt heavier, quieter, more real. The camera lingered on empty spaces. Ty's boots by the door, his horse waiting without a rider, Amy staring at nothing. The show didn't treat his death like a cliffhanger. It treated it like real life. Slow, confusing, full of questions no one could answer, and that's what made it powerful. Amy didn't bounce back overnight. She struggled, she broke, and viewers felt every second of it. Her scenes with Lindy trying to smile through the sorrow were some of the most heartbreaking in the entire series. She had always been strong, but now she was also human, raw and hurting. And through her, fans found their own healing. Heartland could have taken an easier route. They could have written Ty off with a new job in another city. They could have recast him. But the team chose pain over convenience because it was honest. They wanted to tell a story that mattered. And it did. Even Jack, Lou, and Tim, characters, who rarely showed deep emotions, carried the weight of Ty's loss. The dinner table wasn't the same. The barn was too quiet. Everything had changed. But in that change, the show found something deeper. It didn't just continue, it evolved. Heartland became more than a family drama. It became a story of survival, of what it means to keep going when your whole world has collapsed, of how love doesn't die, even when the person you love is gone, and of how we carry people with us, even if we never see them again. Graham Wardle may have walked away, but the writers didn't erase him. They let Ty's memory live on, in Amy's voice, in Lindy's eyes, in the way the ranch still felt, his presence. Every scene after his death became a quiet tribute, and as the seasons continued, Amy began to grow again. Not by forgetting Ty, but by carrying his love as a guide. That's what made the writing so special. Ty's exit didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the beginning of a different kind of strength. In the end, Ty's death became more than a goodbye. It became a lesson. That grief is not something to be rushed, that some stories are meant to end, not because they weren't good, but because they were complete. And through that ending, Heartland didn't lose its soul. It deepened it. So while fans may still miss him, while they may still cry when they rewatch that final scene, many now see it with new eyes. Not as a betrayal, but as a beautiful farewell. One that only someone who truly loved the character could have written, and that someone was Graham Wardle himself.